Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Allegedly Astrology. Normally, we break down the astrology that happened during some of the biggest scandals and events in history. But on this episode, Dana and I are going to be answering some questions from our beloved patrons. And this episode's theme for the Q&A is a Loveline episode. So we're answering some specific questions about love life, things that are happening in our patrons' lives. Some are specific, some are more general, and we're really excited. So first up, we have our patron. We're going to call her Megan. And Megan has had a really exciting kind of whirlwind romance. And she actually dropped us a little voice note. So we're going to play that for you so you can hear her situation in her own words. So Dana, are you ready?
Yeah, hit me.
All right, we're hitting Dana with the Loveline question. Here we go.
Okay.
Hi, Dana, Elise, and Sarah. So great to hit your line in this way. I'll try to keep things as brief as I possibly can. But first, I want to start off by just thanking you, ladies, for all of the light and just great education that you've provided me in the last several years. I love the podcast and everything you guys do.
You're so welcome.
But yes, definitely want to get some insights of this new relationship that is budding in my life that has kind of swept me off my feet and caught me off guard.
Yeah.
I mean, you can literally hear it in her voice. This is so exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
I met this person at a soccer game in my hometown back in June. It was quite a crazy evening. We were standing in the supporter section, which things can get a little rowdy. But my friends noticed that there was a cute, tall, handsome guy standing in front of us and pointed him out and said that I should chat with him. Well, about halfway through the game, he actually turns around himself, starts a conversation, and shares he's from England. He's currently in the British Army and was visiting my city during his time off because he shared he was considering moving here after he hits his 10-year mark in the military.
All right, so we've got a haughty British military man at a soccer game in Megan's hometown. We are here for it. Okay.
I love to hear it.
We love to hear
That accent.
So as we were leaving, I gave him my number in case he needed help finding his way around. It was his last night in town, he shared, but he thought, he was definitely going to be back, all things considered. A few days went by, I hadn't heard from him, but he had followed me on Instagram and told me that he tried texting me, but it clearly probably didn't go through. And so we shared a few messages, and he shared that he was going to be possibly back in my city to attend a music festival. When we were messaging on Instagram, this is when I found out he's actually based in the Middle East, and he's currently on a 9-month deployment. So around July and August, he had messaged me again and asked if he could send his wristband for the music festival to my apartment because he couldn't receive mail on base. So I said, sure. We set a date to meet, and I would exchange the wristband.
Do we think that's true, that they can't get mail on base? I think he just wanted an excuse to see her again.
Yeah, I can't get mail.
Oh,
can you take my mail
what
for
else
me?
Did I do? Can you take my mail? Brilliant.
But honestly, I wasn't really during this time thinking about him romantically. I haven't been focused on dating, and with him being not only a foreigner but in the military, I wasn't romanticizing or idealizing anything. And the night that we were supposed to meet, he, it actually felt like a chore because I just wasn't really sure what to expect. But when we met up for drinks, the connection was instant. I didn't realize how hot he actually was. We honestly had a great first night, and I asked if he had plans the next day and invited him to come to my kickball game with my apartment friends.
Cute.
And he said yes, so he came out with us, had a great time. We ended up going dancing, and then I took him home with me and assessed that situation. And we just had crazy chemistry. The next day, he went to the music festival. We saw each other that evening, and then the following day, he had invited me to go up to a different city in my state for another concert he was going to. So I just said fuck it and said yes, and we spent the weekend with one another.
Ooh.
And just had a really, really good time. But he had to leave at the end of the weekend. And I honestly wasn't sure, what to expect following. But since then, we've just been talking all of the time, FaceTiming as much as we can. I mean, there's a 9-hour difference. So it's, definitely a challenge. But honestly, everything has been so easy. And I think that's what's stumping me is that,
oh my God.
I've just, ever since meeting him, I felt a weird sense of peace in my life and just excitement. And although, there's lots of unknowns in the situation, I just feel a weird sense of clarity and just a sense of ease. And
oh my God.
it feels very natural with him. But he invited me actually to go to England to see him because he was going home to see his friends and family. And I was apprehensive at first, but I decided to say yes because I'm really falling for him. And yeah, while it's moving pretty quickly, I do feel as though it feels very healthy and grounded in the way that it's moving. And we've both been very honest and acknowledging how rare this connection feels and how faded a lot of things feel. But I'm also trying to stay mindful not to over idealize anything just because I've fallen hard before and have missed red flags. So anywho, I'm just here for the ride, but I would love for you to look at our synastry and our transits on all of us because everything just feels really aligned. And
oh my God.
I mean, yeah,
wow.
All things considered, if he does move here, I mean, I would absolutely date him and probably marry this man is how I feel. So we'll see, but would love for your insights to see what this all looks like in the cosmos.
Love you.
Love you, girls.
Bye, Megan.
Thanks.
Bye, Megan. Wow.
I'm so
Such an
excited for you.
eloquent speaker. I'm so excited for her. This all sounds really fun. But, we've been in these whirlwind romances before, so I get why she's a little apprehensive. But
Sure, but she did say that she feels peaceful. Yeah, I feel like now as a 35-year-old, a guy must be better than my peace because I have that by myself,
Exactly. Normally, men don't bring peace to our lives. And if they do, that's a green flag.
Yeah, the greenest.
Okay. So we're going to post the charts for people to follow along, but we won't post the actual birthdays and years. But Dana, just start by giving us a really brief overview on Megan's chart.
Okay, so I have so many details. She has an Aquarius rising, a Cancer sun, and an Aquarius moon. So some important progressions from the past. On February 20th, 2024, her progressed Venus entered Libra. And so it exited
Venus in
the sign. Yeah, her natal Venus is in Leo, but her progressed Venus spent a long time in Virgo, where it's the sign of its fall, where it's extra, it's a rough life. It makes you work really hard and you could feel like you're not good enough. And so it makes sense that she was like, I'm just not going to even think about dating. So on February 20th, 2024, her progressed Venus entered Libra. This is the sign of its domicile. There's a huge vibe shift when a planet changes a sign in progressions. It's also very major that it went from being debilitated to being very strong in domicile. Mm-hmm. So this aligns with just sort of trusting, where she's at and also falling in love, but doing so mindfully. Love is just made less difficult with this transit. And on May 11th, 2024, her progressed Mercury stationed retrograde in Aries. So Mercury rules her natal 5th house of romance and her 8th house of shared resources. And the station marks a change in pace and it just magnifies these topics in her life. So it's not retrograde and now everything's going to shit. It's just a change of pace. And also it can really prolong the moment since Mercury will be at that degree for a few years. And then October 24th, 2024, her progressed sun was opposite her natal moon. This is emotions being illuminated. There's a lot of warmth. On December 23rd, 2024, coming up, she gets her progressed lunar return in Aquarius. So this is a peak period in life. It's her first progressed lunar return. It happens right around the time of our Saturn returns, about every 28 years, 27-ish. So emotional growth, feelings are confirmed. There's heightened sensitivity. And then only 4 days later, on December 27th, 2024, she has a progressed full moon on her natal 1st and 7th axis, which is, of course, the axis of self and other, relationships. And so this is just major for your life and for your relationships, especially because The moon rules your sun, which rules your 7th house of partnerships and also houses your natal Mercury, which is how you communicate, and Venus, of course, how you love. So you met before your birthday in 2024. So I did your 2023 solar return for the first day that you met. And you were in the 3rd house, Aries, Mars year. And the 3rd house is about how we perceive our surroundings. It's also our neighborhood or our locality where we live.
Oh my God, meeting in your hometown. Doing
meeting
things
in your
you're
hometown.
already doing.
And your natal Saturn is in Aries. It rules your Aquarius rising. So when your chart ruler is in your perfected house, it's going to be a significant year for how you define yourself. And natal Mars is in detriment in Libra in the 9th house. Mars is action, sex, pursuit. And in Libra, it's very diplomatic. And in the 9th house is literally foreign lands and foreign people. So meeting a foreigner is right on the money.
Literally right on the money.
Right? The nodes are transiting your perfected house in Aries. So this is definitely a very fated year. Whenever the nodes are in your perfected house, it's a big year. And you're also going through your Chiron opposition, which is about healing and relationships. And your natal Chiron is in the 9th house of foreigner. So being healed by a foreigner
can heal you.
Yeah. So then for your 2024 solar return, you have a 4th house, Taurus, Venus here. And your natal IC is in Taurus, which your home. Your natal Venus in Leo is in your 7th house of committed relationships. So relationships in your home are major themes for the year. So just confirming what you've said. And then your solar return has the midheaven exactly conjunct Uranus and Taurus, which is a perfected sign. This can be a year for snap decisions, surprises with regards to your career, your future more generally. Uranus squaring, well, also Uranus could make this like a whirlwind. So it could be like all of a sudden you're in a new future. And then Uranus is squaring your natal moon, which could be exciting or uncomfortable. When Uranus was squaring my natal ascendant, I was insane, but I thought it was fun. But all my friends, Elise was my keeper.
It's so funny because a lot of this, it really does feel like building up to this. But then I'm surprised that this was a surprise. But then I like how you described it when Uranus is there. It just kind of like creates this element of
always a surprise.
Always a surprise and excitement.
Also, yeah, Uranus squares her moon, which is in her ascendant, and it rules her sun, which rules her 7th house. So it's sort of like a domino of things that she doesn't think. So her sun's in her natal 6th house. So just doing like her regular thing, that is when she sort of stumbles into love. I found that 6th and 12th house placements can sort of like get what you want as soon as you just not give up, but, you know, like when you sort of change your ways and withdraw a bit.
You change your... Yeah, you do you.
So your solar return ascendant is in your natal 7th house. So it's a relationship year and it's exactly conjunct your natal Venus. Oh my God. Very romantic, very relationship oriented year. So Mars retrograde is crossing your natal descendant and your sun. So your Mars is conjunct your descendant on November 23rd, December 19th, and then April 29th, 2025. And then it crossed your sun November 1st, and then it will again on January 8th and April 16th, 2025. This is not necessarily easy, but you have a night chart, which means that your sun's below the horizon, which makes Mars your malefic of sect. And so Mars transits could move you forward without like, you know, being like total destruction. And this could be changes in the relationship or events that change your relationship, maybe that push it forward, things going back and forth. It could really deepen the relationship. Just try not to fret if things seem weird during any of these dates, especially when it's peaking. Do whatever you usually do to relax, if you have to. You know?
Basically, now through April is going to be a little bit of a weird time. And it's going to be a weird time for a lot of us. This Mars retrograde cycle is no joke. Insane. So there's going to be probably a lot of uncertainty around if you guys are going to be able to be in the same place. So definitely don't let this freak you out too much. It's really only, we're really only talking like 6 months here.
Yeah.
You could do anything for 6 months.
Wow. Elise is so strong. She's a Capricorn rising.
True.
Jupiter is also transiting your natal 5th house, which is supportive for love and leisure. That's great. Also, it could make you fertile, so keep that in mind.
Be careful if you're not trying to have a baby.
So then I looked at... Okay.
Leo. We're going to call him Leo. We love Megan Fahey and Leo Woodall from White Lotus. That's how we came up with these names. But Dana, tell us Leo's big three.
Leo is a Capricorn sun, an Aries moon, and a Leo rising. Ooh. And so I looked at his solar return, and his 2024 solar return had the North Node in Aries exactly conjunct his natal Juno, the asteroid that is the wife. And It's in a stellium with his moon, Saturn, south node in midheaven. So a lot of the planets getting hit with his Aries stellium with that. So the North Node's crossing a lot of his Aries planets. And that's really major, especially because right about now, and especially towards the end of the year, it will cross his natal Saturn, which rules his 7th house.
Partnership, 7th house.
Pulling things forward. And his 7th house ruler is in the 9th house, which is common among people who marry foreigners. So then I also looked at his 2025 solar return coming up. He has several romance and relationship themes. He'll be in a Sagittarius 5th house year. And the 5th house is romance and pleasure. His solar return descendant is in Sagittarius in his perfected house. The solar return descendant in the annual perfected sign reliably portends committing in relationships. His solar return midheaven is conjunct his natal descendant, and the midheaven is where a lot of action occurs. The descendant, of course, is the point of the partner. And then just looking at your synastry, so you guys have opposite rising signs. Your ascendants are in each other's 7th house of commitment, marriage, and union. So you're literally each other's other halves. And yeah, this can get irritating sometimes, or you guys will learn from each other. Your Mars are conjunct in Libra. Mars stationed retrograde in Libra 22 days after Leo was born, which extended its stay in the sign. And so you guys both have Mars in Libra, which is the same as Kate Middleton and Will, what's his name? Prince William. Prince William. I don't know his name. Oh, like something Windsor, I think. So they're a Capricorn and a Cancer, and they both have Mars in Libra because of how it retrograded that year. So you guys are also kind of royal. And you guys have your sun opposite sun. So this is generally supportive in Cancer and Capricorn. You open his stoic ass up. Sometimes there are differences.
Opening up a stoic ass British man.
Make
them share their emotions.
Yeah. Are you feeling? What are you thinking about? And Leo has his stellium in Capricorn and Aries. So he has 2 stelliums. His Capricorn stellium's in your natal 12th house. And this will change you. And this is where I'm giving you a little disclaimer. So energy gets heavy as the relationship progresses. You might get annoyed with how well he knows you sometimes. And at times this could be like better than you know yourself, or at least before you know yourself in some ways, or just as well as you know yourself, but you're annoyed that he knows you that well. And he could feel neglected or overlooked because the 12th house is out of sight for you. It's a blind spot. But if he does feel neglected or overlooked, and if he's like a lot of Capricorn men, you won't know. So you'll have to ask. And maybe he's open with communication because he does have an Aries stellium, which hopefully that will be helps. Keeping up to date. But this can be a very spiritual relationship. 12th house synastry can be really wonderful. You guys get to know each other very deeply. But you just have to both of you, tell him to let you know if he ever feels neglected. But if you ever feel like you need some space, go find it. His Juno is in Aries conjunct your natal Saturn. So Juno's the wife, Saturn is commitment. And his IC in Libra is conjunct your natal Chiron. So you're able to go deep with each other in order to heal each other. You also have the power to hurt him because Chiron can hurt.
You guys are also both a pre-Saturn return. And Saturn always brings challenges. So, keep that in mind, that even though it seems easy and comfy and peaceful now, there might be some tough times ahead, but doesn't mean you can't persevere. And especially if you meet someone pre-Saturn return and you guys get through it, it usually means it's worth it.
Especially because Saturn is both, it's your chart ruler and it's his 7th house ruler. So Saturn's major for relationships for both of you.
Awesome.
So yeah. So, and then I did your Davison chart and your Davison solar return with the first meeting chart. So the Davison solar return ascendant is conjunct the natal Juno, OMG. The ascendant, of course, is like a focal point of the year where things are starting. Juno is the wife. And transiting Jupiter in Gemini is conjunct this Juno and ascendant aspect as well. So Jupiter is amplifying everything. Also in mythology, Juno and Jupiter were married. And
so is Jupiter the husband if Juno is the what?
Yes, Jupiter.
Cool. History lesson, if you will.
A little history lesson. And then the North Node is in the 7th house conjunct Saturn. So the nodes are transiting the 1st and 7th, which is a time when relationships definitely have more action and turning points. For you, it's, meeting each other. The Davison progressions when you first met, this is very relationship themey. You guys had your progressed lunar return. So this is frequent for couples to meet during this transit. It's like the moon is manifesting astrology on Earth. So it's putting you guys in the same place at the same time. And then, of course, like I said earlier, the nodes were transiting the Davison 1st and 7th house. The eclipses are happening in the 1st and 7th house. This is a fated encounter. And then the 2025 Davison solar return happens April 18th, 2025. It starts at 5th house Aquarius Saturn year. The Davison Saturn is in the 7th house of commitment. And the solar return Saturn is in Pisces, conjunct Venus and the North Node. So this is, of course, fated events with the North Node. It's romantic, commitment, Saturn's commitment, the North Node is fate and future, and Venus exalts in Pisces. So it's very sweet and romantic. And the descendant is in the perfected house. So like I already said, this is a reliable indicator for relationships, or year where relationships are really like major. And it's a Davidson nodal opposition too. So there's just so much fate happening here. It's in your 6th and 12th house. So you guys could be like swirling away together. You guys could be building each other into your routine. It could also be like not getting to see each other, I guess, for some time and then having to exist, not in secret, but in private until you guys can see each other. And then Pluto's conjunct the IC. So this could indicate moving, very deep conversations and sometimes endings, but I think this is a beginning, of course. And the 7th house ruler is Mars, and it's conjunct the midheaven in Leo. So actions are taken with regards to commitment and like what's the nature of this relationship together. So you guys have a lot of relationship stuff going on. You just have to be mindful of that Mars retrograde. Feel free to let us know what happens. I would love to know, and I'm really rooting for you.
Yeah. So as we're recording this, Megan is in England visiting Leo. And by the time this episode comes out, she'll have come back from England. So we can't wait to hear how that trip met. I feel like going to his turf and meeting his friends will be really exciting. But yeah, so Dana, all in summary, you say go for it.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, first of all,
yes, go for it.
Your heart and mind always know before astrology, but
exactly. To confirm
the endorsement of astrology,
the endorsement of astrology. We've given you the endorsement for this relationship. So let's just do a quick summary. Your synastry is strong as hell. You've got your ascendant, opposite ascendant. We've got the sun, opposite the sun. We've got a Mars conjunction. Your Davison chart has the sun in Aries, conjunct your descendant, which is opposite Chiron on the ascendant. So that's really good. Have multiple significant relationship placements. So that is big. And you met when your Davison lunar return was, it just was like a fated meeting, it feels like. And so I think overall, this is a good thing. And we cannot freaking wait to see how this turns out for you. Yay!
Yeah, no, I'm so excited.
Get it, girl. All right, moving on. So we have a couple of more general questions from our patron, and let's call her Gina. And so Gina wanted to know, generally speaking, for people that have stelliums, does that make it any easier or harder in synastry? And from what you've seen, Dana, does it matter if the partner also has a stellium? So, for example, Gina has a Scorpio stellium, and her chart is very water heavy. And her most recent ex had a pretty even spread of like air, earth, fire placements, barely any water. So she kind of wanted to see if in someone's natal chart, if they attract dark house synastry, which I'd like to hear your take on it. But Gina has heard that, 2nd house, 6th house, 8th house, 12th house. Some people might consider 4th house a dark house. She also noticed that a lot of friends, family, and romantic partners share a more dark house synastry. She's saying she doesn't seem to have rich connections with people with prominent placement in her 5th and 7th house. In our last one, we just talked about a lot of 5th house and a lot of 7th house being like big connections. And Gina's kind of wondering if that's where she's missing out and maybe struggling to find a more lighthearted connection. So, Dana, do you want to kind of go into that?
Sure. Well, one reason you might not connect with people who have 5th and 7th house synastry is your sun is in the 12th, so it can't see either of those houses. So it'll be averse. Yeah, it'll be averse. Any people who have placements in those houses will be averse to your sun. In terms of stelliums, I think that it's just the way for you, like that energy is concentrated. It will be like that for that person. So I don't really honestly have a strong opinion on people with stelliums dating each other. I do think that it's definitely an astrology thing that people will balance each other out. So if you have a lot of water and like your partners don't, that would make sense that they're seeking water. And it would also like, if you're also very water and you're dating someone who's like very dry, air and earth, then it's going to be like, hey, like you have emotions, right? So that could get annoying for you. But it's all about balance if people are open to an experience. The same way that 12th house industry, like I said, for Megan, if you're open to it, you just have to work with it and try and be mature about it. But the reason that people call the 4th house a dark house is because it completes the trine with the 8th and 12th houses. So it's angular to the ascendant, but it shares the same element with the 8th and the 12th. So it's the only house that can see both the 8th and the 12th, as well as the ascendant. It's like the whole portal into those two dark houses.
Do you consider these negative, or just does dark always mean bad?
I don't think so. I mean, it really sort of depends on what you're looking for, what you like, but also how it all balances out. And also, like, what I want for people is to not be repeating trauma, right? Like, those could be really traumatic houses that just have an allure, like a trauma bond, I suppose, or some sort of other secretive type of bond. But it could also be where you just like to hang out in isolation, or maybe it's a very psychological relationship. Maybe it's about money. That's the 8th and 12th. It is just that, like, with the 4th house, it's where those houses are tied into the 4th house, which of course squares the ascendant. So the 4th house is family and your early childhood programming. So that could sort of bring in people who repeat family patterns. So like I just said, if that's what you're doing, and you don't want to be doing that, then I would say this is not ideal. But if you're sort of looking for like a deep relationship, it just has to be, if that's what you like, then that's what you like. And I think every 2 months or so on Twitter, I notice that people will be like, I just love 8th and 12th house industry.
Okay, so let's get into Gina's big 3 and talk about this hefty Scorpio stellium, because
crazy.
She was not exaggerating. It's very potent in her chart.
So she has a Libra sun, a Leo moon, and a Scorpio rising. I love this big 3. Yeah. Mercury rejoices in the 1st house in Scorpio. Also, Jupiter, Venus, and the North Node are all tightly conjunct, which is pretty cool. Love a Jupiter-Venus conjunction. The North Node there adds a lot of intensity, beauty. Maybe people are really attracted to you. Or sometimes North Node synastry can be feeling like you are off-putting to people sometimes. Then Pluto is there at 26 degrees. So yeah, so this is just sort of like a very brooding but also maybe like you feel intense inside, but maybe outwardly you're just sort of, nonchalant. I really am reticent to stereotype Scorpio placements for whatever reason.
You literally can't. Scorpio placements are so hard to generalize. Every time I think I know something about a Scorpio, they surprise me. So honestly, I think that's a good thing. They're always keeping me on my toes. But yeah, very hard to generalize anything with Scorps.
Yeah. Also, your stellium is ruled by Mars and fall in Cancer, which trines Pluto, which gives you a lot of psychological insight, which could be one reason that you're interested in sort of like darker houses. Like you want to talk about deeper topics. The 5th house isn't a house of deep topics. The 7th house is romantic, but it's also like paperwork. So, and it can also be tough having Mars in Cancer. That could be one reason why you're asking this question. I have Mars in Cancer, so I'm not trying to single you out, but it's like, why do I like this? Like Mars in Cancer can be self-critical. It can be people are always giving you a fair shake so that you take it out on yourself. And maybe you get really angry and snap sometimes. These are just things that happen in life. And, your Saturn return is the perfection's over. You're in it now. So that's another reason. Saturn transiting the 5th house, you're like, what's my deal? So it would be reductive to say that like you like dark house industry because you're a Scorpio, but you do have this water trine. Water is a sign water is the element that is very emotive, likes to go deep, very intuitive. With your natal Mars and fall in Cancer, you could be just more comfortable in relationships that activate the dark houses because you just have a more intuitive and like darker touch. Maybe the people who are willing to have these dark house conversations or do these dark house activities is just what you like right now. Maybe not forever, but you just like depth, I would assume. And yeah, it could be self-mastery. You just want to get to know people, or maybe it's psychosexual self-destruction. Only you can answer that. But, sometimes it could just be romantic. Also, your natal sun's in your 12th house. So it's home to you. It might feel comforting when other partners can meet you on that level because then they can like really see you. And so that's where your light shines in the 12th house. So it's hitting you, hitting that warmth. It's like a warm feeling.
So we kind of gave an overview on Gina. So now let's talk about Gina's ex. So she kind of wanted to give us something to kind of document in the charts of maybe like why this person is an ex, and she also wanted to know like the difference between a fated lover and a lover that's not fated. I think she said she's heard astrologers say things about meeting fated lovers, But in Gina's opinion, isn't everyone you meet in this life, romantic or otherwise, someone you're fated to meet anyway? Would this being fated be synonymous with forever? That's a very water sign take, and I love it. It is. You assign meaning to every person that you come across in this life, and they are going to teach you a lesson, which very much agree with this, right? So it depends on how you want to interpret what fated means. Do you want to give more meaning to the word or not, right? So it's kind of up to you, but let's let Dana kind of go into your ex's chart. We'll give you their big three and then kind of get into the fated versus not fated situation.
Yeah, well, the synastry seems pretty fated. So her ex's big three is a Libra sun, a Sagittarius moon, and an Aquarius rising. So their suns are conjunct in Libra. Both are ruled by debilitated Venuses. So his is in fallen Virgo and yours is in detriment in Scorpio. So you can both be hard on yourselves. People can be really unfair to you because your suns are in fallen. Then they're ruled by Venuses, which are also debilitated. So you guys can really understand each other on a different level where maybe you don't, you treat each other better than other people treat you. Duration, just like a general understanding and a lot of love. Also, your Venuses sextile each other. So in Virgo and Scorpio. So that's nice. They can see each other. And Virgo and Scorpio are two signs that really like to get shit done. And his ascendant-descendant axis is conjunct your midheaven IC. So his ascendant is conjunct your IC, pretty close. And this is one thing where you could go, hey, it's fated. He may have shared similar mannerisms to your parents or family of origin, just because that's what the IC is. Or maybe he could just tap into the deepest part of you. That's the IC is the deepest part of your chart. Maybe hanging out with him just felt comfortable. It felt like home. And then
Interesting.
Yeah. And then your moons are trine in fire signs and you both have your moon conjunct the midheaven. So you guys share having the moon conjunct the midheaven, which could be feeling like your emotions are public in ways, or you might get passionate and a little dramatic in public with those fire sign moons. So your moon's in Leo in your 10th and his is in Sagittarius in his 11th. And this really lightens up heavier synastry aspects. Fire signs are fun and passionate, romantic, like dramatic, but like sweet and caring. You also have dual Saturn South Node synastry. So his Saturn in Taurus is conjunct your descendant in South Node, and your Saturn in Pisces is conjunct his Jupiter in South Node. So it's also significant that these are your 5th house of romance and 7th house of, commitment in marriage, Saturn's commitment. The South Node's like what's familiar. Maybe you guys were married in a past life if that's what you believed. It's just very much like I can't quit you vibes. And also, I don't know when you dated, but this could be why you're still thinking about it. That's actually how I determine, if I'm still thinking about someone, I'm an astrologer, but my rule of thumb is if you think something, you're right. Not in a toxic way, but if you think something, instead of dwelling over it, I'm like, I must just be right, and then it's easy to move through that. Another nice aspect is that you guys have your Jupiter's trine in water signs. His is domicile in Pisces, yours is in Scorpio in your 1st house. It's conjunct Venus in the North Node, so you have this really alluring aspect to you. Jupiter trines just feel good. Jupiter is the planet that feels good. A trine is something just feels easy. So this is just feeling easy together, maybe having similar belief. And in water signs, it would be sentimental, sensitive, intuitive, a lot of goodwill between the two of you. And his Uranus is conjunct your IC and opposite your moon. So this is magnetic attraction. Uranus is a planet of magnetic attraction, but also it's a planet of whirlwind relationships. So this might have been a short relationship that was short on itself, but somehow, kept going on. Or maybe he was inconsistent, but exciting.
Interesting.
There's a lot here that balances it out, I think.
Yeah. And so I think it's good that Gina asked a lot about patterns and fate, and that she maybe doesn't have a lot of super rich connections with people with prominent placements in her 5th and 7th. But I think it's a good example to show that obviously we think of them as the relationship houses, but it's not always, that's not everything, right?
Yeah. You also have your natal Saturn in the 5th, which means that until your Saturn return, it's been a tough house for you. And then you have your natal South Node in the 7th, which means that it could be a part that you just don't gravitate towards necessarily.
Doesn't mean you can't find a relationship.
Yeah, I wonder if they dated while the North Node was transiting her 7th house from January 2022 through July 2023.
Interesting. Gina, ping us and see if that's the relationship timeline. But I do want to mention from a more practical note that Gina's ex that we did is 4 years younger, which can be a little bit more challenging, I think, sometimes, especially pre-Saturn return, if they are maybe more inconsistent or less reliable or wanting to settle down. I don't know if that's the right time for them, but again, something to keep in mind if you revisit this later down the road.
Definitely.
Well, thank you, Gina, for submitting those questions. We're going to dive into our very last question. And this one is a very complicated situation. So stick with us on this. This person didn't leave a voice memo, and I did my best to distill this down into what was happening. So this person, let's call her Carly. Carly got married last September and explained to us that this was sort of an arranged marriage. They met through a friend who reached out to her on behalf of her now husband. And she was sort of in a situation where she felt she needed a change. And something about this was, she was like, I want to meet this person. So she decided to take a risk, and she booked flights to go and meet him in person. During this time, she was still recovering from a really tough 3-year-long, which she refers to, a situationship, and that situationship had ended. She says that this person had a chokehold on her feelings, and it ended somewhat abruptly when he told Carly he was getting back together with his ex, leaving Carly really heartbroken and emotionally wrecked. So first of all, we want to say, Carly, we've been there and it fucking sucks, a situationship or not. When you have strong feelings for someone, it hurts like hell when it doesn't work out. So especially a 3-year long, our hearts go out to you. So this is where things are a little wild, and we have not been here. So this is where Carly is unique in this situation. So 1 week before Carly is about to go meet her now husband, the situation ex reached out to her out of the blue and said he had a dream that he saw her looking for him. And, they always resurface, right?
It's so annoying. Oh, you had a dream about me?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
You're awake now, bitch.
And so that very same day, she got into a car accident and she was okay. But she just really didn't have any time for his nonsense. She kept it short in her response to him and ignored him when he followed up and said he wanted to meet up with her. So fast forward a week and 2 days, and she's now on the trip with her now husband. And 2 days in, she got the horrible news that her ex-situationship had died, which is crazy. His death is actually still not particularly clear, but his family had said that it was a cliff diving accident. So after all of this, Carly, again, hearts go out to you. But our girl Carly wants to know what the future holds for her and for her relationship with her current husband. This all happened before they got married. And now, more than a year later, she says, we love each other deeply and accept each other. But at times, there's a disconnect and misunderstandings. Is this just marriage? Or is there something in our synastry chart or wedding chart that may show the problem? And lastly, is there anything that could have predicted my ex passing away literally the same time as I'm meeting my future husband? So there's a lot there. And, we just want to say we don't love predicting deaths, and we don't recommend that you look at charts trying to predict that. We can go back and look at it, but that is not a recommendation of ours. But first off, Dana, let's talk about Carly's big three, what her chart looks like, and then we'll kind of go into the chart with her and her husband.
Carly has a Cancer sun, a Capricorn moon, and a Gemini rising. We love a thinker. Venus is on her ascendant in Gemini. She has Mars and Fall in Cancer.
A lot of Mars in Cancer today.
Yeah. And it sextiles her natal Saturn. So her malefics sextile each other, which is really great for being productive. I respect that. She has the South Node on her midheaven and the North Node on her IC, which could mean that people really gravitate towards you in public settings. They feel comfortable with you. You also have Jupiter in the 10th house in Pisces in domicile. So this is also very, lucky. It could make you very generous. You have to definitely love generous Pisces placements, but keep something for yourself. The moon is in detriment in Capricorn in her 8th house. That's tough. It also rules her sun. And it's ruled by her Saturn, which rejoices in the 12th house, but it's also still in the 12th house. So they're both earth placements. The moon in Capricorn can avoid feelings. In the 8th house, it could be people feeling entitled to your time and also like, not necessarily your expertise, but like people might expect you to take care of them since Capricorn is such a provider.
Her chart is giving, Dana loves saying when things remind her of a song lyric. So I'm going to do my own. This chart reminds me of that new Taylor Swift song from Tortured Poets Department. It's, I cry so much, but I'm productive. It's an art.
I love that. Yeah.
Like I think it's I Can Do It With a Broken Heart.
Oh, nice.
It's the name of the song. But
I cry so much, but I'm productive is such a millennial.
I cry so much, but I am so productive. It's so funny, but so can we see you. So wait, Dana, before you get into the synastry, let's give just a brief overview on the husband's big three.
Okay. He has an Aries sun, Pisces moon, and a Sagittarius rising.
Interesting.
So I would say it's wild that this marriage came together because the synastry is very much two people who are married.
Whoa.
Your ascendants are literally...
This is, again, an arranged marriage, as you guys remember. So they didn't know each other that long before they got married.
Did either your
been married for over a year now.
Hire an astrologer? Because this is wild. So your ascendants are conjunct each other's descendants, which, literally each other's like marriage partners. The 7th house is committed partnerships. You guys both have Mars in fall in Cancer and they're tightly conjunct. So this can be tough if someone needs to address conflict head on, but it's probably nice to both be gentle and like understand how tough and annoying it can sometimes be to have Mars in Cancer.
A thing that I didn't say in the overview that I did want to point out is that she said that when she was with her husband or her now husband, like a couple days into their meeting, and she found out this horrible news about her ex, he was very understanding of her, even though he didn't know a lot about what was going on. So I think that's like that Mars in Cancer is like, they didn't talk about it much, but he was empathetic towards her.
So his Juno and North Node are conjunct your moon. Juno is the asteroid of the wife, as I've said several times today. And right,
Juno, so much Mars in Cancer. What's going on?
Yeah, well, Mars is about to retrograde in Cancer, so all the Mars in Cancers are like, "Hey,
help me!
That Loveline, hit that Loveline,
call that Loveline.
What's going on?" And then the North Node adds gravity here, so he's like, "Oh, she's my wife." And then your moon is your physical body, what you need to feel secure and how you react. So it's generally favorable for marriage, though jealousy can come into play whenever Juno is involved. Your Saturns square each other, so this could make things not necessarily dull. It could make you guys just like really butt heads. They're also both in fixed signs. So Saturn in Aquarius, which is a preferred domicile, squaring Saturn in Taurus, it's just very stubborn. So honestly, that could make or break a relationship, right? Like if it just, like two people want to control something, relinquishing control could be a theme. Or if you don't feel like this is your relationship, despite the lovely synastry, you're right. And then looking at the wedding day with the natal chart.
Yes. So Carly asked about the wedding day. And wedding day synastry, especially if you're signing papers, it's very important. We can't say that everybody needs to consult an astrologer on their wedding date. But for me, I got legally married on a day that was really great for like long-term partnership and also like contractual synastry. And then I picked a really fun day to throw a party.
The fun party of the year.
But we want to talk about the actual wedding day natal chart.
So this chart has a Virgo sun at the 29th degree, a Sagittarius moon at the 29th degree, and a Capricorn rising.
Interesting.
So the sun rejoices in the 9th house. It's a favorite house to be in. Also indicates marrying someone from somewhere else. The first quarter moon in Sagittarius and in these mutable signs could indicate, an impulsive decision. Like that Bruno Mars song. It's a beautiful night. I'm looking for something dumb to do. Hey, baby, I think I want to marry you. Okay. So the moon in Sagittarius is conjunct your natal ascendant and your husband's ascendant. So partnership is manifesting for both of you. For him, it also marks a change in how he thinks about his individuality and also it's a woman in some guy's life. So, a woman now is in his first house. So I wonder also, was getting married his idea? And then
I think he asked a friend to reach out on his behalf.
Right. Okay. So it all sort of, then the future sort of happened in the, before it even happened. The descendant is conjunct both of your natal Mars, which shows actions made to advance or change a partnership. The status, or it could also show like jumping the gun, but like Mars in Cancer moves sideways towards things. So it's usually not something that's like super impulsive. The North Node is conjunct your husband's natal Sun and Mercury. So it's a very fated moment in his life. The Sun is conjunct your natal Juno. So, and this is a spotlight on a wife. Like, you're walking down the aisle, going to the chapel and going to get married. Pluto is conjunct your natal Moon and your husband's natal Juno. This is intense. So did you feel any pressure? When my friend's Pluto was transiting her Sun, she felt like changes were being made and she heeded them gratefully, grabbed life by the balls, I guess is what I would say. But it is intense. Either way, like it's a significant journey and usually it's trying, but it's definitely like for growth and development. So maybe you're like, okay, now I've grown into this role. And Saturn is conjunct your natal midheaven and south node. So this is maturity and commitment. Transits to the midheaven are common when people get married. So I guess it's worth assessing if it feels like it's limiting your future. That's one thing that could happen when Saturn is transiting the midheaven. And then Neptune conjunct your natal Jupiter. Jupiter rules your natal 7th house. And when the 7th house ruler receives a hard aspect from Neptune, that's a conjunction, an opposition, or a square. Then jumping into a relationship, like you are jumping into a relationship and you can't see it clearly until the transit ends. That's just the nature of Neptune. Neptune can make you more self-sacrificial. And then when it's over, you're like, oh, I want my life back. Or you could just draw boundaries. Either way, you could stay in this marriage forever, but this part of the relationship will be like a part when your Neptune or your 7th house ruler was getting a direct transit from Neptune, making things, it could also make things like very romantic. Maybe you were swept off your feet. So it's not, it could be both. And then looking at your transits and progressions on the day when you met your husband and your ex died, your progressed moon is conjunct your natal descendant. That really wowed me. The progressed moon shows the focal point of our lives for like about 2 years. And the descendant is the point of relationships and the partner. And when the progressed moon crosses this point, committed partnerships are magnified inwardly, outwardly. It's just like things are happening, manifesting in real time to the partner. And for you, it was 2. Neptune is conjunct your natal Jupiter. And of course, like I just said, that rules the 7th house. Neptune is dissolution, obliteration, divine inspiration. Jupiter is freedom and goodwill. So it's sort of literally, obliterating one person's life who lived in your 7th house, like if we're talking like a board game. And it's just interesting and reflects the sort of inconceivable dissolution of one relationship. And then maybe the sensitive beginning of another. And then the Sun is conjunct your natal Mercury, which Mercury rules your Gemini ascendant and your natal Venus, putting you in the spotlight and sort of clarifying relationships for you. Like is a major change. You were also in a 2nd house moon Cancer year. So your natal moon is in detriment in Capricorn, your 8th house, and your natal Cancer Sun is in your 2nd house. Also, your Mars and Fall is there. So the 8th house is the house of death and the moon is the body. Pluto transiting your natal moon can also indicate harm to the body. It just wasn't yours.
Wow.
Mars in Fall in your perfected house can also portend violence. So this all reflects passing away, especially, Cancer is the ocean. So cliff diving or a body of water. And then Juno is conjunct the ascendant in your solar return chart, which indicates a year when you're likely to meet a romantic partner. So that's just very significant. And then just looking at your ex's transits and progressions, when he died, he was in a 7th house Gemini Mercury year and his natal south node is in Gemini. So 7th house was a death house in ancient astrology. It's not commonly used as that anymore, but it does include death. And the south node indicates that something's getting phased out. And for him, it was himself. The solar return had Mars retrograde in Gemini, and Mars, of course, indicates violence, even though it wasn't a violent death. Like he didn't get, there was no sparring. It still
was violent, though.
I don't know, Ethan.
We don't really know. And neither does she. She doesn't know too much. We can't speculate, but it doesn't seem like it was just a peaceful death.
No. And Mars is also stationing direct. So this just really turns the volume all the way up on Mars. Mars is like so powerful when it's stationing direct. He was also born during a Mars retrograde and passed during a Mars retrograde. So often significant milestones occur in people's lives during a retrograde that's reflected in the natal charts. And Mars is the least common retrograde. So it could be especially significant for that.
But Dana, would you look at this and say this is a death chart if you didn't know?
No.
Well, that's why we say we don't want anyone to be going to people's charts and looking at this and thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to die.
No. His solar return ascendant is conjunct Uranus. Uranus can be a surprise death. It's also in his 6th house, which is a house of illness or injury. He had his moon conjunct the IC in his solar return in his natal 8th house. So the moon is the body, the IC is a point of endings and death, and the 8th house is also death. And then looking at Carly's natal and solar return for 2024, she's in a 3rd house. Leo sun year, her natal Mercury is in Leo, her natal sun's in Cancer. In her 2nd house, it's her solar return 11th, which is a social house. The solar return also has Mercury in Leo. The solar return ascendant and moon are in Virgo in your natal 4th house conjunct your natal IC. So solar return and Saturn return. The solar return Saturn is conjunct your solar return descendant, which could indicate endings or commitments in relationships. It generally, though, could be not necessarily trying, but serious. Definitely, I guess I would say there will be trials and tribulations. Neptune stationed retrograde 7 days before your birthday. So Neptune's pretty static in the chart. There's like confusion about maybe how you're moving forward. So you have 2 solar returns in a row with Juno conjunct the ascendant. That's wild. You could literally meet another romantic partner, or it could be a business partner. Usually, though, it is when people meet. If you have already met someone else, this would reflect that. You didn't indicate that. So I don't know why I'm speculating. It's just a habit of a Gemini. If you're worried you won't meet someone else, though, this supports that you probably will. And then in terms of like major transits you have going on this year, Mars stations direct conjunct your natal sign. And this indicates energy and taking action around your changing goals, especially as they pertain to your identity. Your sun rules your natal Mercury in Leo, which rules your natal Gemini ascendant. So you have to make the moves that are best for yourself right now. And like, how do you want your future to look? How do you want you to be in the future? I was just on a weekend with my friends and they all have kids and they're all married. And they sort of were like, talking about like finding their identity within those 2 contexts, especially as mothers, but I'm sure as wives too.
Right. Yeah. I just got married and I'm still figuring it out, but I feel like I have a husband who's very supportive of my individuality. But yeah, it's like you are navigating life with a slightly different identity, but you still want to be your own person. But it might be just redefining things for yourself. So I think it seems like a very important year for what your future is going to look like and what moves you want to make.
Yeah, and also the Mars transiting Mars retrograde opposes your natal moon, and that rules your sign, and Mars in fall. So it could indicate conflict with others as well as inner conflict about what moves you want to make next. It could be conflict about like choosing what to spend money on, because the 2nd and 8th house are lit up. And then your Davison chart. So the Davison chart has a Sag sun, a Leo moon, and a Virgo rising. So the Davison will be in a 7th house Jupiter year starting November 24th. Natal Pisces is in Saturn. So your Davison is in its Saturn return. And so this is famously a trying time for all.
Davison is in its Saturn return right now.
Yeah, it's in its Saturn return. And Saturn is in the 7th house, which is the perfected house. It could be like a couple that's very committed. It could also, I guess, if it feels stale, that could be why. It could be the transit that ends the marriage. Sometimes that's what happened. Neptune's also transiting the 7th house, which makes it maybe all the more confusing. And then the solar return Jupiter in Gemini is conjunct the natal midheaven and the solar return descendant. So that's auspicious. It's moving into the future, whether that's liberation from the marriage, Jupiter's liberation, or getting through this and coming out stronger on the other side.
You always say Neptune is confusion and delusion.
Confusion, delusion, getting drunk, picking up a car for the baby. And then the solar return ascendant is in Sagittarius, conjunct the natal IC. The IC is a point of endings. Mercury is also exactly conjunct the natal IC, and it's stationing retrograde a day later. So that's loud. So conversations around the home or relating to endings or just like reviewing the status of the marriage. Like it could also just be that you guys are moving. But yeah, if it's looking like an ending, this looks like an ending. But if it's looking like redoing the home, then this also looks like that. But it could also be revisiting conversations, or conversations will be had, maybe they haven't been had yet, or they've been had this month. They could be had like throughout the next few months. And then the solar return midheaven and south node are conjunct in Libra in the Needle's second house. So it's just a fated year for the future of this marriage altogether. I'm so floored and like amazed by all the synastry of all these. What do you hope for her, Elise?
I just hope that she has the strength to make whatever decision she wants. I'm sure there are a lot of loud people in her life with opinions, and you don't want to hurt anybody either way. But I think it's important to listen to your gut and listen to yourself. What did Dana say earlier this episode? If you think something, you're right.
If you think something's true, it is.
If you think something's true, it is. That's
and this is in terms of like
Gemini, like believe fake news, right?
Yeah, no, it's not. You have to be a Gemini to know how to really play with a concept. Just kidding. Yeah, I just use that in terms of like, I don't know. If I ever was like, oh my God, like, is this relationship right for me? It was like, I just learned to be like, yes or no. Or if you think something's going on, trust your gut and then believe yourself and then sort of don't go crazy. It's to protect yourself from spiraling and to learn to trust yourself. Those are the two reasons I support it. Not because I think we should all be like Alex Jones out here. I just think that the older you get, the more you're like, yeah, that's what it is.
I think what's surprising about all of these charts, obviously, besides what we talked about, the Mars and Cancers are not okay.
Mars and Cancers are not okay. I'm just amazed by the synastry in all of these.
All of these people have good synastry with the charts that they
just like
submitted
very,
to us.
Yeah, like it's like puzzled. Of course these people are married sort of thing, or of course these people are meeting now. Of course they're attracted to each other. These are all fated relationships.
But again, compatibility is a choice, right? So you can see that you have good synastry with somebody, but it doesn't mean you have to be with them.
For
right?
sure.
Like you can choose to be with someone who you might not have great synastry with, but that you're choosing to be your partner. Probably that won't happen, right? Like if you're gravitating towards someone, there has to be some kind of synastry there. But again, it doesn't mean you should be sticking with someone just because you have good synastry. You have to choose how you want to be in a relationship and what relationship is best for you. Because you have the option. There's not just one right person for everyone, right? So you have to decide how you want to make things work. And that goes for everyone in the episode. Wow. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much
for submitting your Loveline Q&A questions. But yeah, next Loveline we'll post on our Patreon. And so if you do want to ask a question and have it be answered, make sure to join our Patreon. For $5 a month, you get all this extra bonus content and you get to talk to us directly about all these burning questions in your lives. So with that, I'm Elise.
I'm Dana.
And this is Allegedly Astrology.
Goodbye. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.